You see that? French balconies.
The Chinese would not have built a city this way.
Now, I'd like to tell you a story. It's a story of a city whose shape is defined by its history.
A generation has not changed the face of Shanghai as much as it has changed its soul.
Now it's just buildings and a road. They could have had a wall.
This is the story of how 100 years of foreign rule shaped Shanghai.
The past and present, the cultural conflicts, the changes, they all come together in Shanghai. The waterway is the city's most heavily used highway. Rivers, more than roads or railroads, crisscross China in every direction. And Shanghai has always been the most important truck stop.
Now, Shanghai's always been a port city. Like, even today, look how many ships are still running through the water. They're everywhere. Like, look at the little one. And then you got the big chonky boy. And you even have, like, the little, like, flat-looking vessels over there, too. I don't even know if I can I zoom in on that? Yeah, look at that. Look at those. See, Shanghai started out as a little tiny fishing village. But from there, things started to get a little bit complicated because they started to smuggle in opium.
Okay, now, I made this whole video on how the British opium trade started this massive chain reaction that eventually led to the communist takeover of mainland China. But here's a speedy version of what you need to know. Okay, so the British were like, oh my god, we love tea. And the Chinese, which had a monopoly on tea, were like, bet, we'll sell you tea for silver. And the Brits were like, sick. And then the British ran out of silver. So the British devised this whole plan of getting the Chinese addicted to opium by smuggling it into the country in exchange for silver, which they then used to buy the tea. But when the Chinese found out, because their people were literally getting addicted to opium, they chucked that shit into the sea. And when the British were like, oh no, you can't do that. That's not very free trade of you. They started a war. The Opium Wars. 2 of them, actually, which the Chinese lost because, well, they brought swords to a gunfight. And as a result, China entered a period of their history known as the Century of Humiliation, where they were forced to sign these treaties that gave up land and autonomy to foreign powers. And that's how we get here. The settlements.
So Shanghai was a treaty port, meaning, well, the Chinese government had no control over what was going on here. You see, the British were making a killing off of their opium trade, and all that money flew through here.
Shanghai's past reflects the glory not of the Chinese Empire, but of the British Empire.
The Bund is like the artery of the city. Originally, the Bund was the central part of like the financial hub, because that's where the port was, that's where the money was flowing. And that's why a bunch of the buildings that you see are banks. Most of the buildings on the Bund are banks. Like, look at this. Look at this, okay? Okay, look. Bank, 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 bank. So like, if you look at the map of Shanghai, you'll see that the French and the international settlements will connect to the Bund.
Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention. So the British and the Americans combined their settlements to form the International Settlement because, they just wanted to be inclusive. So every country that signed a treaty with China, they could be part of the governance of that settlement. That way, they could, spread the blame that it wasn't just them doing pseudo-colonialism, but everyone was. How DE&I of them, eh? Now, I want to get one thing out of the way. Unlike Hong Kong and Macau, which were established as colonies, technically speaking, even though in these settlements, a foreign government was collecting the taxes, building the streets, had their own police force and military, these settlements were not colonies. The Chinese government technically still had sovereignty over the land, but since barely any Chinese people lived in these areas, and the ones that didn't have any voting rights till like way later, but hey, remember, it's still not a colony. The Chinese government was like, oh, fine, you guys can govern yourselves. Because like, realistically, they had a lot of other problems they needed to deal with. Like I said, made a whole video about it, link in the description. But because of this unique situation, when you visit Shanghai today, you can see how all this foreign influence shaped how the city was built.
Un croissant, s'il vous plaît.
This part of the city that I'm walking through is the French Concession. Like, this place literally screams French. Like, just take a look at the buildings around us. You see that? French balconies. Like, even these housing blocks look really French.
They even have French bakeries that serve pastries. It doesn't get more French than that.
And when you look at a map, you've got like the British and the Americans and the international settlement to the north. And then to the south is the French Concession. And then you have the old city of Shanghai. if you're somebody trying to plot a revolution or a criminal, it's pretty easy for you to jump around the fragmented enforcement areas. Because you could just jump from like one concession to the other. And then what are you gonna do? That's the reason the Chinese Communist Party's first National Congress was in the French Concession. Nice. Like, the Chinese Communist Party was literally founded right here. Literally in that building. I just want to say, I find it quite funny how you have like the founding of the Communist Party like right there. And then you look right across the street and you've got Lululemon right there.
Now the Lulu is jokes, but it just goes to show you how Shanghai still has a pretty deep connection to the West.
Like, this place that I'm walking down right now is like a mixture of Chinese and Western architecture. They're called shikumen houses.
See, look. Tall, multi-story buildings made of brick and iron doors? Very European. But notice how they also face inward and have courtyards that support small gardens and communal living. Very Chinese. Now, these houses show how cultures can blend together over time. But by now you're probably wondering, well, where did all the Chinese people live? Well,
Welcome to the Shanghai Old City. Wall.
when you look at a map of Shanghai, you'll see that the old city is situated right here, kind of smushed between the international settlements and the river. Now, the Shanghai Old City is incredibly well preserved, and when you walk through it, it really gives you that sense that you really just stepped back in time to ancient China. Also, mostly because there's dudes everywhere trying to scam you. But it's almost too well preserved.
Feels like weird because there's like nobody in any of the buildings, and it's just like a street. It's just like dead that they preserved. Like walking down the street gives you a sense of like how people used to live, but it's still kind of eerie.
Now, if you haven't noticed already, because well, you're blind, but why is the old city shaped in like this almost perfect circle?
So here's the thing. The Shanghai Old City used to be surrounded by a giant freaking wall. Okay, so everything that you see here is where the old city of Shanghai used to be. So this road that is behind me, that's where the wall used to run, all the way down over there. So this street where we're looking at, this is where the wall used to be. It used to come here and all the way down over there. Okay, it is absolutely pouring right now, but what you guys see behind me is the last remaining portion of the Shanghai City Wall. Some pretty nice wall. Now it's just buildings and a road. They could have had a wall.
Now, Shanghai City Wall obviously served the purpose of defending the city from invaders, raiders, and pirates. But as much as you may think that this wall was meant to keep the Chinese in, it was more of a wall meant for keeping foreigners out.
You see, but the problem with the old city was that they were getting too congested. So they needed to do something about the wall. And so Chen broke it.
So this guy, Chen, was the governor of Shanghai in 1911, and he had the wall dismantled. Here you can see an image of them dismantling it. Now, after a few years, a few wars, and a few revolutions later, the settlements were given back to the Chinese, and together with the old city, merged to form the Hongpuao district of Shanghai. Huangpu. I don't know. What we know today as the Shanghai Urban Core. And till the 80s, basically, this was Shanghai. But then, something insane started to happen. Because when you think of Shanghai today, you're probably thinking of this.
This is so sick. This is crazy.
Okay, so then, what the heck happened? And where did all these skyscrapers come from?
We're gonna build, baby, build. We're gonna build those factories.